All right, today we're diving into a classic chemical mystery. It's called The Case of the Eight White Powders, and trust me, it's a good one.
So picture this. You've got 8 white powders sitting in front of you. They all look exactly the same. Now, you know one of them is salt and one is sugar, but which is which? Your mission is to figure out what all of them are. So where do you even begin?
Well, like any good detective story, the first thing we need is a suspect lineup. So let's meet our powders. Okay, so take a look at this list. We're not dealing with some crazy exotic lab chemicals here. I mean, we're talking about table salt, chalk, and even cornstarch. These are things you could literally find around your house, which makes this little investigation so cool. It's super relatable.
Now, no detective gets very far without their toolkit, right? To crack this case, we've got our own little forensic kit, a set of simple but really powerful tests that are going to help us tell these powders apart. We're going to be looking for 2 main types of clues. First, we've got physical properties. These are things you can observe without actually changing the powder's identity. You know, stuff like, does it dissolve in water? Simple. But then we have chemical properties. This is where it gets really interesting. This is all about how a substance reacts and changes into something new. It's kind of like our interrogation technique. We'll see which powders fess up and bubble when we hit them with a little vinegar.
All right, let's get specific. Here are the tools in our kit. We've got water, which basically asks, hey, do you dissolve? We've got iodine, which is specifically looking for starch. Then there's vinegar to help us find any carbonates. And finally, litmus paper to figure out if we're dealing with an acid or a base. See? Each test is basically a yes or no question, and every answer is going to help us narrow down that suspect list. Okay, we've got our suspects, we've got our tools. It's time to make our first move. And believe it or not, this first simple test is about to blow this case wide open. So think of this flowchart as our investigation board. It's where we're going to track every single clue. And our first move couldn't be simpler. We're just going to add some water. And you'll see how this one step is going to split our 8 suspects into 2 way smaller, way more manageable groups.
And boom! Just like that, we've got a major break in the case. The results are in. 5 of the powders dissolved. They're what we call soluble. The other 3, they didn't. They're insoluble. So we've just gone from one big group of 8 suspects to 2 separate investigations. This is huge.
Okay, let's tackle the easier problem first. We're going to focus on that smaller group, the 3 powders that wouldn't dissolve. It's time to put these guys under the microscope, so to speak. So we have 3 suspects in this little group. Our next tool, iodine. The big question now is this test going to give us our very first positive ID? Let's find out. Yes, check it out. When we add the iodine, one of the powders instantly turns this deep blue color. This is a classic chemistry tell. Iodine only turns blue when starch is around. And just like that, we've got our first positive identification. Powder number 8 is cornstarch. Case closed on that one. 1 down. Okay, so 1 down, but we've still got 2 to go in this insoluble group. Our remaining suspects are calcium sulfate and calcium carbonate. So how do we tell them apart? Well, let's bring in our next tool, good old vinegar. Here's the deal. Vinegar is an acid, and it has a very specific reaction with carbonates. It produces carbon dioxide gas. And what does that look like in a liquid? You guessed it, bubbles. So when we add the vinegar, one of the powders starts to fizz and bubble. That's our dead giveaway. It's calcium carbonate, also known as chalk. The other powder, it just sits there, does absolutely nothing, which means it has to be calcium sulfate, or gypsum. And just like that, we've identified the entire insoluble group. All right, feeling pretty good. 3 suspects are officially identified. Now it's time to turn our attention back to that bigger group, the 5 powders that did dissolve in the water. Time to put them to the test. For these 5 soluble powders, our litmus paper test is the perfect next move. Now, it's not going to give us a single positive ID right away, but what it will do is sort all 5 of them into 3 brand new smaller groups. We find out 1 is acidic, 2 of them are basic, and the last 2 are neutral. We just made our job way easier. And hey, look at that. That acidic group, it's only got 1 member. And if we check our master list, the only acidic powder we started with was boric acid. So boom, another positive IG. That one was almost too easy. We're halfway there. Okay, next step, our 2 basic powders, sodium hydroxide and sodium carbonate. How do we tell these 2 apart? Well, let's bring back an old friend, the vinegar test. I mean, one of them has carbonate right there in its name, so that's a pretty big clue. And sure enough, when we add the vinegar, bubbles. That's gotta be the sodium carbonate. The other one, sodium hydroxide, does nothing. And there we go, another 2 suspects identified. We are on a roll. We are down to the final showdown. Just 2 suspects left, sodium chloride and sucrose. You know them better as salt and sugar. Now, this is tough because they both dissolve in water, and they're both neutral. So what's our move? We bring in a new solvent, alcohol. And here's the key. It turns out sugar dissolves way better in alcohol than salt does. That little difference is the final clue we need to crack this case. And with that last test, we've done it. The identities of all 8 white powders have been revealed. This investigation is officially case closed. And just take a look at this, our completed flow chart. Our investigation board is all filled out. By following a totally logical process and using really simple tests, we went from 8 complete unknowns to 8 perfectly identified substances. You can see how each step just narrowed the field until there was only one possibility left. So what's the big takeaway from all this? I think it's that you can get to some really powerful conclusions from really simple observations. We used physical clues, like solubility, to sort our suspects into groups. And then we used chemical clues, like reactivity, to get those final confessions. The whole thing just goes to show that if you combine careful testing with a little logical thinking, you can solve pretty much any complex mystery, one simple step at a time. It really gets you thinking, doesn't it? I mean, this kind of systematic approach, it's not just for a chemistry lab. What kind of everyday mysteries could you solve if you just applied a little observation and some logical reasoning? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this one.